If you want to participate, contact me at ordinarywomenpodcast@gmail.com. I'm sure you have great projects to brag about. You can also follow me and message me on Instagram at ordinarywomenpodcast, on Twitter at ordinarywomenpc, or on Facebook on the page Ordinary Women. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Ordinary Women. I'm welcoming Prachi today. Hi, how are you?
Good, doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine too, thank you. Really excited to have you here today. Can you start by giving us a quick introduction of yourself, please?
Yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Prachi, and I am a product manager. I work for a staffing firm. I live in Denver, Colorado, in America. I'm originally from India, and I've been living in the US for about 4 years now. And I'm very excited for this conversation.
Nice. And is there something unusual about you?
You know, I really struggle with these kinds of questions because I feel the pressure to be interesting and like say something fun, but I don't think so. I think probably the only unusual thing about me is that growing up, I was the biggest nerd possible. I was like nosing the book all the time, and I hated physical activity, and now I'm the complete opposite as an adult. I love rock climbing, I love biking, and just doing outdoorsy things. So I like how I've evolved.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's super funny. Do you still read a lot?
I do, I do. Oh, this is like not unusual, but it's also like another thing of just how big of a nerd I am. So I have a bookcase and I have all of my books organized in like a rainbow because I have like every color book
Oh,
possible.
I love that. That's so cool.
It's really not.
It is. Maybe I'm a bit of a nerd as well. I don't know.
Nerd Unite.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Obviously, in this podcast, we talk a lot about what it's like to be a woman. So I'd like to start by asking, was there a moment or an event in your life when you realized that you are a woman?
I don't think that there was like one specific moment. I want to say no. I always grew up, so a little bit of a background there can probably be because of the way I grew up. So, India, growing up in India in a very small town, even though I grew up in a very, very small town, like, nobody really knows the name of it, blah, blah, blah. My parents always encouraged, I have a younger sister, so my parents always encouraged me and my sister to just, do whatever we wanted, be free, reach for the skies. So there was never a limitation that I grew up with on myself and the sense of self that I had. Um, so growing up, I never really focused on the fact that I was a girl versus boy. I think it was only when I was in my sort of late teen years that you start noticing how people treat you differently or how society treats women differently. And maybe that's when I realized, I belong to this group that's called the group of women.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a lot of us have that when it's like discrimination. Yeah, which is unfortunate. But
And I think it comes also from just, as a teenager, you want to like express yourself. You're finding yourself too. You're trying to figure out who you are as a person, what is your personality, what is your style statement, things like that. And growing up in India and knowing that you couldn't wear certain types of clothes or you would be labeled in a negative light, or that you couldn't be seen hanging out with a certain type of crowd, or you would be labeled a certain type of way and probably shamed for it. Growing up with some of those types of things sort of made me realize that I had to do a little bit of extra work to maintain my sanity, I want to say.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. How is that like, how is it now that you're an adult? Do you still have thoughts around that? As in,
Hmm.
like, you know how sometimes your first thoughts are like what you grew up as, and then you had to like understand that it was not necessarily the values that you want to hold as an adult, and then it's still kind of the first thoughts. Do you still have that?
It's sometimes, not all the times. I think that, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but at least for me, growing up has been a process of reinventing myself with every experience that I've had. So that means that every time I feel like I'm struggling, I just learn something new and then I redefine myself. And then somewhere along the way, I just sort of stopped paying attention to the fact that I'm a woman, or that because I'm a woman, I should behave a certain way or act a certain way, or that I'll have to do certain things. I just sort of started paying attention more to what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Where do I want to be? What are the things that are important to me? What are the values I want to hold true when I'm doing things? And then I started to feel free in like the simplest sense of the word. And that was kind of liberating when you just sort of stop paying attention to all the things that are holding you back and start paying attention to all the things that motivate you.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And speaking of growing up, did you have any women role models?
Tons. I had a lot of role models growing up. I've just always been very interested in the people around me and trying to understand how did they get to where they are, what makes them tick. One of the biggest influences that stands out for me, though, was I was just entering my teenage years and I started reading about Anne Frank through one of my English textbooks. And then I went ahead to the school library and tried to find her actual, like the diary that was published. And I remember just being extremely moved by her story, just empathizing with her struggles, admiring the strength of someone who was almost my age at the time and was in such a tough spot, and just making that comparison between how easy life was for me and how I could take her strength, take her resilience, and carry that through into my life, and how to translate all of that for me as I grow up. That was one of the biggest influences for me growing up. Now, today, I think I try to draw inspiration from everybody. I think there's something or the other that I end up learning from anybody that I meet. So I keep my eyes peeled for those moments and those conversations and those lessons where I pay attention to how people react to adversity, how people react to success, how people react to failure, and try to understand how I can learn and be better and just absorb the knowledge that everybody around me has to offer.
I love that. Yeah, I'm also a big believer that I can learn from literally every single person. Yeah, who do you think is the last person who taught you something, and what did they teach you?
Interesting question. So it has to be my boyfriend. So I was laid off 2 months ago, and I was, as an immigrant, I was under a very tough deadline to find another job, or I would have to leave the US and try to re-enter. Anyway, so I was lucky enough to get a job rather quickly. And we were talking about just that experience. And he said something that was just stuck with me, where he said that the way I approached my search, I I increased my luck surface area or something to that effect. And that was just very interesting where in the end all that I did was reach out to as many people as I could and ask them for help. And in that process, I ended up increasing my chances to get lucky. So that was like the surface area of luck that I ended up increasing in my job search. And that ended up helping me. So that taught me that really people who often say things like, oh, I was like lucky enough to find this, are people who maybe ended up increasing their luck surface area.
Yeah, I love them. I love every discussion around the concept of luck because everyone has their own perspective about luck, and it's really interesting. And also, yeah, sometimes without realizing it's like it's just what you did. But yeah, it's really interesting because, like, I don't know, I often hear people talking about I'm very lucky in this versus it's not luck, it's work. I'm a strong believer on the in between.
And I agree with that. I think that more often than not, women mostly I've seen pay more emphasis to the luck part of their achievements. I don't know if this is true. I don't have any data to prove it. But in my anecdotal experiences, I've seen women say more often than men that they were lucky that they got the opportunity or that they were lucky that they succeeded. What I often try to point out in those cases now is that, yeah, you were lucky, but also you put in the work. You wouldn't have succeeded if you didn't take charge and take that opportunity. So I think it's about action and it's about how do you use the opportunities that come your way as opposed to passively waiting for an opportunity to come your way.
Yeah, definitely. I really agree. And yeah, I'll try to find if there is any sort of data on, yeah, women saying more than men that they're lucky. But I feel the same. But same, I've never like read any studies. I don't know if there have
Mm.
been any.
And maybe I'm wrong, but it's an interesting observation just from personal life.
Yeah, no, but yeah, definitely. And yeah, I have the same. I'll ask around and I'll try and find a study
Yeah.
to see. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And do you think that the lack of representation of women in society had an impact on you?
Not so much. And maybe I'm just a really different case here, but it's one of those things where sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So, like I mentioned, my parents really modeled the hard work pays off mentality. They really pushed us and supported us in you can do whatever you put your mind to. So I never really paid attention to the lack of representation. And in fact, when I did start noticing lack of representation in STEM, I was really motivated to sort of break those stereotypes, or I don't know what the right word is, but to sort of break that cycle of lack of representation and be one of the first people who's trying to make a difference, however small that might be. So, because I was always just too focused on trying to do what I wanted to do, trying to focus on the goals I had, trying to focus on how I could achieve my goals, I couldn't really focus on being discouraged by the lack of representation. Let's just say I didn't have time for that.
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. Like focusing on saying, hey, whatever happened before, I'm gonna be the representation now, so that there will be. That's really,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think it was really only when I came to the US, and I believe the fact that I did not pay attention to the lack of representation was could be because I was in India surrounded by other people who looked like me and had a lot of feelings of belonging in my home country, and then moving to a different one, I didn't see a lot of people, not just women, but just didn't see a lot of people who looked like me in positions of power. That's when I really started paying attention to the issue of representation and the different ways in which it can impact a person. It can impact how a person thinks about themselves and their place in the world. And that's when I sort of started to make active efforts to be that person for other people. That representation is also one of the reasons why I wanted to be on this podcast. So I'm very happy.
I love that. And yeah, I'm sure that other people will benefit. Well, I really hope, because I'm what I'm trying to do here. I really hope
I hope
that
so
other
too.
people will benefit from that. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And yeah, I mean, especially, yeah, like moving. I mean, I'm white and European, so I am I never lived what you lived in that sense, I guess, because or maybe it's just because I didn't move far enough from home. I only crossed one very small sea. But yeah, I guess when you move very far away, I guess it's, yeah, you never realize there is a song like that, sorry, my brain got stuck on that. But the song Let Her Go, and there is you only miss the sun when it starts to snow, blah blah blah.
Oh, yeah, I know that song.
Yeah,
You
I guess
when it's burning low.
yeah, that one. I guess my point is, yeah, that's really interesting that, yeah, we don't realize how much things affect us until they're not there or they arrive.
Yeah, and I've had multiple experiences where I started paying attention to the things that weren't there in my life anymore when access to those things was hard. So thinking about moving all the way across the world and not having access to my friends and my family in the same ways, that was tough to adjust to, where early on, I lived probably a train ride away overnight and I could go see my parents. And now it's 24 hours of flights later.
Oh my god, yeah. It's so funny slash awful, because when you start just thinking about that, I also don't live in the country I grew up with. And you were talking about your friend and family, and that's something super sweet. And I was thinking about cheese and bread, and it's a fucking
Hey,
French, but also
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think about all the Indian food all the time.
food is so hard. I think it's something we don't talk enough. Also, we don't talk about enough.
Maybe if we have time today, I will do a whole answer on why food is love.
Oh my god, please. But actually that leads us nicely to kind of the second part of this podcast, and talking about a project, achievement, life experience, call it however you want. And if I remember correctly, you wanted to speak about what it was like to move.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you, tell us well, I guess you say that, where did you move? How did you move? How did you get the idea, or the willingness to move?
So that's interesting because I did not want to move.
Oh, okay.
And remember how I said my parents really always supported us and encouraged us to go after bigger, better things, not just go do it, basically. It was really my dad who planted those seeds and continued encouraging me to uh, go explore. I remember I was in the third year of my engineering undergraduate degree, and there was an opportunity to be a student visitor in the US and just study there for the summer in 2016. Initially, I was like not really into the opportunity. I was kind of either doubting myself or also thinking about money. And I come from a middle class family. We never really had wealth, quote unquote, how wealthy people are able to do stuff and things like that. So I don't come from generational wealth. So money was also like a big thing that I was thinking about. And my dad was just like, you should just go do it, experience it, and then decide if it's for you. And that experience, being a summer student in the US, learning how different the education system is here versus where I was in India, where I was, that was really eye-opening, and it was more my speed. And that got me interested in maybe someday moving to a different country to pursue my graduate education. I always knew that I wanted to do like a master's degree. I just wasn't sure what it was going to be. So after I finished my engineering, I started working in digital marketing of all industries that I could choose. And then I was just really interested in creativity at the time, and worked for about a year and a half in digital marketing. It was really fun. I learned a lot of things, but the engineering brain sort of called me and wanted to, start building technology. So that's when I got really serious about moving to the US. I applied to, I think, 5 or 6 universities, and I went to Carnegie Mellon, which is probably one of the best universities in the US today. Very, very fortunate that I got in. And to this date, and here you will see my imposter syndrome showing, but to this date, I am just amazed that a small town girl from India, from like a little corner of the world, ended up at with such a brilliant group of people studying. I studied innovation management, so just studying all of that fun stuff. It just amazes me that that's my journey.
Yeah.
and I'm just always inspired by all the help I got along the way, all the experiences I got to experience, and just, all the support that I got. So I have to say the decision to move was really like encouraged for me.
I love that. Also, it's funny because like we were talking about that, how, you just described yourself as lucky when you did all the work of like applying, doing this, doing that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's right. I did describe myself as being very fortunate. I want to say that even though I did the work, coming from the background that I come from, and maybe just not really seeing a lot of people around me who were achieving at similar levels, I didn't think that what I did was enough. I didn't think that the grades I got or the essay that I wrote to get into grad school was impressive enough. I didn't think that going to the undergrad school that I went to was enough for the grad school that I was applying to. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would get in. I did, but I never thought that I would.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I always have that also with, well, like now with job applications. I mean, I had that also like going to school and stuff. When last time it happens, I told myself, you know what, if you don't trust yourself, trust the recruiter. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
If they choose you, you
Yeah.
know, and if you're good enough to make them think that you are good enough, then you're probably good enough, and like they know what they're doing. You might not, they
Exactly.
do.
Exactly. And it's funny you say that. So my younger sister is now finishing school in Canada, and she also, moved away from the country to a different one to build a life, build a career, and she's now graduating, and she is in a very similar situation where she works part-time for a bank, and she was telling me that she doesn't understand why they are giving me the part-time role because she isn't confident, and I had to sort of counsel her in the same way of you might not believe in yourself yet, but these folks who've been in banking for all these years believe in you, and they're giving you this opportunity, and now it's up to you whether you're interested in it or not. And I think I wonder if this is more specific to women or if this is just general for people, just the self-doubt and the feeling of inadequacy.
Yeah, I feel that it's definitely more, more for women. Men do have a confidence that, uh, yeah, I would love to have it. There's this amazing, I think it's from an interview. I'm not too sure. I've always seen it as a GIF, of Jane Fonda saying, "Do it with the confidence of a mediocre white man."
Oh my God, I love
And I
that.
love that. I love her. So yeah, every
Yeah.
once in a while when I'm trying, also, yeah, when like applying to things, jobs or school, whatever, there are like so many studies and data that shows that
Yeah.
women are less likely to apply, or like need a higher to match a higher level of competencies
Mhm.
than men to apply, which is, yeah.
And that's, that feeling of just feeling inadequate and self, all of the self-doubt that comes with it. I've I have noticed for myself, uh, even though I'm just super ambitious and I like want to reach for the stars all the time, I always feel inadequate and doubt myself. And I started doing that more after moving to a different country. And as in, I don't know, maybe it's just like being a first generation immigrant that I felt like I didn't belong here, just like, like an outsider looking in, like feeling like I had to work twice as hard to earn the trust of a recruiter, of, my teammates or whoever I'm working with. Or I was constantly comparing myself to the people around me and wondering if I was doing things the right way, quote unquote, right way, even though there isn't a right way of doing things or of going about trying to achieve your goals in your career. Like everybody has a different path to in their lives. And I think it's important of a realization to have. And I wonder if these senses get heightened when you're away from home and away from a place that's comfortable for you, surrounded by people who you've known for so much of your life and things like that. Um, So I think so obviously I don't let those feelings of inadequacy or self-doubt really take over. I've evolved now into a state of taking charge of those feelings and just acknowledging them, like, not trying to ignore you, not trying to say that you aren't valid, but just, you can be a part of my path, but you don't have to overshadow my entire journey where I'm just always feeling inadequate and always doubting myself. I think now I've learned how to manage my imposter syndrome a little bit better and just reminding myself that it's okay to feel that way. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious how that evolution happens for other people.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I guess that's also why it's so important to get a new support system when you're going like to a new place, because all of these doubts, they can answer it and they can reassure, yeah, about like who you are, because obviously like people are important, like it is important to get support. Yeah.
Definitely. I remember moving, so I have been I always seek out relationships, and I always seek out friendships and those relational bonds, to have a community around me of people I trust. And I never have like a friend group of 20 people. I always have like 3 or 4 people that I really love spending my time with, people that challenge me, people that add value to my life. And I tend to rely on that little friend circle to help me. And then I also have everyone else that is part of my life. And that becomes like the luck surface area that I was referring to earlier, where all of the jobs that I've gotten so far have been because I knew someone who believed in me and was willing to take a chance on me. And that's been a very important lesson for myself, is to just make sure that along this journey of, my career, that is my project, I pay attention to the people that are a part of it. Like, my successes are never just my own. They are a culmination of all the help I received along the way. Oh, yeah, sorry, that's like a little off track, but
No, it's so interesting, completely. And I don't think there is anything that anyone ever does on their own anyway. And that's always why I ask like all the guys. I mean, I haven't asked you now because we
okay.
talked about that all already, kind of. But like, if there was someone important, and like you talked about your dad, for instance, like there is always. But I always ask that because there is nothing that anyone has ever done on their own, or like it's super, super rare. But like you
Oh,
always
yeah,
have a support system. You always have
yeah,
people who you've taken inspiration from, etc.
definitely.
Yeah, we are social creators. I don't know where I've heard that, but like it's so true. Like we need other people. Actually,
And
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, so to that point, I remember very specifically in school, we had, I forget the name of the teacher, but I remember their teaching. I was probably in first or second grade, and the conversation was around how we are all connected, and the way that the teacher explained it to us was that, you think that your shirt is your own, but really somebody had to make the button, somebody had to cut the fabric and sew it. somebody had to stock it in a store and then deliver it to you. So even if you think that your shirt is your own, there are so many other people who had a part to play in the making of that shirt. And that was like a moral of the story sort of a thing for like developing as a person, of like, consider yourself that shirt. Everybody around you has a part to play, and your successes are, yes, you did the work, and yes, you should take the credit always, but also be mindful that you are moving along in your life with all of these people around you who are supporting you and playing a part in your successes. So that was a really important lesson that it came to my mind when you started talking about us being social creatures, and that nobody can just succeed alone on their own.
Yeah, I love that. I have a very less poetic example in mind. Yours was so great. I loved it. But have you seen the film Into the Wild?
No,
Um,
it's been something that I've actually listened to all the songs on from
oh,
that from that film, but I haven't seen the film.
do you know what it's about? Can I do like some
Oh,
spoiler?
yeah. Go ahead,
Okay,
spoil it
cool.
for
I'll
me.
put something on the editing so that people who don't want to be spoiled can pass it.
No
But
worries.
basically, like, the story is about that guy. He's from a very, very privileged family. He just finishes, I think, high school and has to go to uni, or finishes, I don't know, maybe uni and has to go to work. Can't remember exactly. And for that, his dad gives him a car, which is already, like privileged family.
Mm.
And he disagrees strongly with that, and he's like, I don't want to accept anything from you. I don't want to accept anything from society. I'm going to go on my own and prove that I can do things on my own, basically. And he
Mm.
goes, I really hated the film, honestly. And I know that's an unpopular opinion because so many people love it, but basically the guy goes and he's like, I can do everything on my own, and then proceeds to basically get a lot of free things from people less privileged. And it's like, if you want to do some volunteering, use the money that your family have. I don't know. But like, he goes and he's like, yeah, I can live on my own. Let me eat at these people's place. Let me get that surfing board from that other people. Need to go from one place to another. Great, I'm going to hop on the car that someone paid with the gas that someone paid again. Like, work to do that. Yeah, and I really did not like that, or like, not that I didn't like the movie, but I really hated that character. He
Mm.
was a real person. I would have hated him in real life, sorry. But like, it's like, no, you can't. And it's fine that you can't do anything fully on your own. And like, maybe some people do, but like, realistically, no, you can't fully on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not, in my experience, I have not ever thought that anything I did was only because I was the only job performer. Like,
Mm.
if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't have made the decision to move. If it wasn't for those few faces in the crowd who were willing to take a chance on me and willing to give me that opportunity, I wouldn't be where I am. And let me support that with a very recent example. So I mentioned earlier that in January I was laid off, and that was a really stressful time. And I decided to just broadcast to my LinkedIn network that I was laid off, and as somebody who's on a work visa, I need help because I only have 60 calendar days to find a job. People just they rallied around that post. That, I mean, I can read off of the analytics that are in front of me. There's like 30,000 something views, and I was
Oh,
looking for
wow.
a product manager role. So at least 1,100 product managers viewed my post. Not that it means a lot, but actually, one of the product managers who was viewing and reading my post uh, turned out to be a hiring manager, and they asked their recruiter to reach out to me. And that hiring manager today is my boss. I work in her team because she read my post. She decided to give me the opportunity to interview for her company. And that ended up just helping me a whole lot. Yes, I had to perform well in those interviews. I had to meet their criteria and all of that. I had to do all of that. It wasn't handed to me. But if it were not for my current boss reading that post, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Um, and I have one last question for you.
Mhm.
Why are you proud of this journey and of yourself?
Hmm. A lot of interesting questions. I think that it is easy for anybody, really, but more importantly, easy for a woman in STEM, in technology, a first generation immigrant, first in her family to ever leave the country, to ever finish college, go to grad school, finish grad school. It's really important for somebody like me to know how to not get caught up in imposter syndrome. Um, you never thought growing up that you would be here. You never thought that you deserved your achievements, but in reality, you've been building towards wherever you are in life all your life. And for better or for worse, I believe in the cliche that is carpe diem. Yes, there will always be barriers to entry, but we have to take control. We have to take charge of our adversity. We have to answer our problems and our adversity with resilience and kind of just keep going and keep putting in the work. And the fact that I've been able to do that so far, I find that very impressive and inspiring. And that's a quality about myself that I really just want to keep building on.
I love it. And we're going to conclude our episode on this. Thank you so, so much. Really enjoyed this conversation and listening to everything you had to say. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity too. And I hope that what I said is useful for your listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be useful for so many people. And also selfishly, it really was to me. So
Well, all
thank
right.
you. And there is a tradition on this podcast that the guest always gets the very last word. So the mic is yours.
Just keep swimming.